watching this. So, of course, John, you're here to give the Nebraska perspective on things. And, I think you and I have talked about this before on Big Ten Live and elsewhere, that I think Matt Rhule was probably the best hire you could have gotten out of everybody available. Like, you somehow pulled him away from making 40 million sitting in his whatever kayak or hut or whatever he's up to. You got him out when he could have taken a year or two off to come and coach the Nebraska football team and bring it back up to hopefully some glory days. And so with that said, John, kind of looking at Nebraska as a whole and in this game, walk me through a little bit of kind of what you've seen the first couple of games here.
What, let me ask before I start, which version of me do you want? Do you want the lying, deceitful Homer, or do you want the guy that actually is kind of truthful about everything?
Well, we try to keep the insight and analysis going here at Voice of College Football, but you can add some Homerism to it because we don't mind that either.
Okay, I'll have to do that, otherwise I'll just weep. Matt Rhule, I think he was a good hire. I mean, before, when we were looking for all these coaches and looking through all the lists, and God knows you have to put every name out there. The other guy I actually wouldn't have minded was Luke Fickell, and he went to Wisconsin. So I guess my preview on Matt Rhule was that he looked like an Ewok. That was the only negative thing I could find about him before we hired him. And I think that, well, let's be honest. I mean, Nebraska won the offseason. He was everything that the other guy wasn't. He's done all this stuff. He spent his offseason going out and building relationships with, internal state of Nebraska high school coaches, Texas high school coaches where he had connections. He went out and built a lot of relationships, and he repaired a lot of the ones that were, well, quite frankly, damaged by the previous coach. And, I think that will pay off dividends. Nebraska is keeping their own players largely at home, which, there's not a lot of them, but honestly, when they go to other schools and they're, like Carter Nelson, I think was a 4 or 5 star recruit. If he goes to another place, that's kind of embarrassing, and it's a mark on your program. If you're the only program in the state and you can't keep a guy. So I think probably it's been too good. The coverage, the goo that we have the phrase. I don't know if you guys do this during the off season, but Nebraska's media, and we do this a little bit at Coronation. You just heap sugar on top of sugar on top of sugar, and Matt Rhule says all the right things, and then we go into Minnesota, and we throw the game away, and then everybody's just instantly. We could have hired Deion Sanders, and he's turned it around. He's magic, and everybody loves him, and we just are so bad. And it's been that part of it's been nuts to deal with. And I'm sure you guys, Michigan, you have a passionate fan base. You're all insane at times.
Oh, absolutely.
Now you have Ohio State under your thumb, and I suppose it's been good lately. Who has it better than you?
Yeah, I mean, some would say Georgia, but I'd say Michigan is up there, and obviously Georgia's 1, Michigan's 2.
Yeah.
But I've actually, so believe it or not, to prepare, I actually watched some film from the last couple of games,
okay.
and so I've watched this guy Heinrich Haarberg become the number 1 rusher on your team.
Yeah.
And so not only can he quarterback, he can throw. And some of your Nebraska people on the last show, they were saying, can he throw that well? Jury's out. But when he runs, he runs.
Yeah.
And
right.
He can take you all the way 70-plus yards and get touchdowns. So, so what's your take on what you've seen from Haarberg so far?
That part is shocking. See, the key there is he can't just run; he can outrun. And I think the thing that completely shocked me, that he actually had a burst of speed, and he went right past granted, there were Louisiana Tech defensive backs, but I still, for a guy you never thought would do that, he was off and gone. And, it was nice to see that, because the honest to God truth is our offense doesn't really have playmakers. And if he can add anything to it, then we're that further ahead. I think that, the passing stuff, none of us has really sold real heavily on that because, well, to be honest with you, we don't really have playmaker threats at receivers. We have Billy Kemp, who's decent, Marcus Washington, who's decent, but they don't seem to be getting open. They don't seem to be getting separation. We have Tommy Hill that at least once a game comes in to run down the field and get thrown a ball in the air in the hopes that he can catch it and stretch the defense. But, that put it this way, Jeff Sims came in for the first 2 games, and when he threw the ball, he threw it to the other team. And that's apparently not, that's not good when you're doing that in football. And, he literally threw the Minnesota game away. And then you could argue that I think Colorado would have probably beat us anyway.
Yeah.
And I hate to say that. I really do. But, giving them the game and giving them the turnover, we just gave it to them. So, plus we've been beaten, and when you get a guy out there and you kind of like, he might be good. You're like a little, things might be okay. It's really, you don't want to be too loud. Otherwise, it's back to crouch and cover and hide in the closet, stuff like that.
Yeah, I will say the Minnesota game didn't surprise me too much, except for, like you said, Sims. Just because of the closeness. Like, I could have seen that game going either way with that, like, defensive performance. Like, I genuinely thought that's probably what was going to happen, but I wasn't sure who was going to come out ahead. But it could have gone either way. But I liked the physicality I saw from Nebraska at times. Like, Rhule has absolutely implemented that. And so going into Colorado, I actually, believe it or not, I actually thought Nebraska was going to beat Colorado because I thought Colorado didn't have the line play to contend with a Big Ten team. And I still don't think that they have the line play to contend with the best Big Ten teams. You look at what Oregon just did to them.
Right.
Their line play was like, it was like this. I mean, compared, but Nebraska, I think you're close. I think you're, looking at what Rhule does in every stop of his career, except for the NFL, but in every other stop in his career, he builds programs up. So, seeing the physicality already, I heard that in practice, they, we don't use the previous coach's name. You and I call him Voldemort. But
I usually refer to him as that guy we fired.
That guy you fired. But apparently there, the quarterbacks, like, there wasn't a lot of tackling in practice compared to what Rhule is doing. And so that was a needed change in the Big Ten. But I will say, and, I had some people criticize me on the last show, because I did stop by the Nebraska show for a minute, and they were like, well, he doesn't respect our defense. Well, actually, I do. And I have here, so 13 and a half sacks. I think I counted correctly. I was looking at but you have a lot of sacks. Yeah. And the 3-3-5 has given Michigan trouble against a team called TCU, right? So it's not like it would be crazy to see Nebraska get maybe a turnover or something like that. But I'm looking at these players, Isaac Gifford and Omar Brown in particular, although I think that there are quite a few. But what have you seen on the defensive side of the ball that you want maybe somebody who's a Michigan fan to know about?
I think the thing is, we heard a lot of the offseason was spent lamenting the fact that our offensive line doesn't have a lot of depth. And it kind of doesn't. And the defensive line would have no depth whatsoever. And to see the fact that our defensive line has actually come out and played very good, that's probably out of any position group, I would say that's the biggest shock. Because, it's not just been that we haven't had a pass rush in freaking years. And all of a sudden we are pressuring people and we are we are sacking people, and granted, it's just the beginning of the season, and Michigan, I think, is a whole nother level of stuff. But The fact that the defense shocked me. Honestly, I figured Minnesota would score their custom 25 points, and they could barely score at all. So that the fact that they're playing as good a defense as they are, they're swarming to the ball on tackles. They're very aggressive when they need to be. The defensive backs are doing a fairly good job in coverage. That has been pretty surprising. Way above whatever expectations I might have had. And I think it starts with Ty Robinson up front. I don't know if Cameron Lenhart, who's a freshman, will play this weekend. The polar bear, I think his real name is Nash Hutmacher. I call him Nutmasher because I'm terrible with names. And we'll see. We'll see how good those guys can stand up to Michigan's offensive line.
Clearly Nebraska fan. We're going to have 9 sacks. 9 sacks. Wow.
9. Yeah, 9.
That's quite a few. So let me ask you this. And we were talking about this on the Nebraska show, and I tried to answer from both perspectives. Like, what would Nebraska have to do to win? What would Michigan do? But in your opinion, looking at this game, obviously Michigan's favored by 19.5, but
it went down to 17.5 today.
Oh, did it?
See it there? Getting worried.
Okay. So either way, that's a decent chunk of points, but they're thinking maybe a little bit less than before. So I guess just what does Nebraska need to do on all phases to beat Michigan?
They need to have an offense. That's really what it comes down to. They need to our offensive line is a work in progress, and that's probably being kind. I don't know what you're going to hear from other Nebraska people, but here's what I see. They don't come off the ball as quickly as they need to. And I don't think that they can. We don't really have a passing game because we don't have great playmakers in the receiver core. Now, maybe something will happen during this game where we'll make some plays and Michigan will have to respect the passing game. But we're going to have to run the ball, and we're going to have to run it very well. And I just think that our offensive line is going to have to play better than they have yet this season. They're going to have to come off the ball. We run counter plays sometimes and trap plays, and in those plays we pull, right? And I just wonder if we have the speed to get off on those plays and get the blocks carried out without Michigan. You guys have probably one of the best defensive lines in the nation, right? Yeah. And you have one guy that's like projected in the first 2 rounds. I can't remember his name. But yeah, I just if Nebraska's offensive line can't man up, then I think your defensive line will just treat us like ragdolls. And I think our defense can probably keep up with you for a while, but not if we can't make first downs and possess the ball. And that's the other key is, I hate to say this too. My God, I've already said nice things about Colorado. I think we want to be what Minnesota has been. We want to be able to possess the ball, extend possessions, run the clock, keep your offense off the field, get first downs, and then score, just get some scoring. And I think if we can do that, then, keep it maybe within a touchdown going into the fourth quarter, and we'll see what happens. Nebraska's last 2 games against Northern Illinois and Louisiana Tech, we have looked really, Chris Jenkins, that's the guy I was thinking of.
Because the other one I was thinking he has another year still. So Chris Jenkins.
But I think the last 2 games, Nebraska has been fairly flat in the first half. And I came out with a theory, and that was because the guy we fired, he would always lose games at the end. They'd always look like they were completely petered out by the fourth quarter. Now we just walk around. We kind of just, we're really flat in the first half so we can be really good in the second half and then win the game at the end. That's our new thing that nobody else is saying but me.
Yeah, win it at the end.
Yeah.
I think so let's go to the Michigan perspective of what we might need to do to win the game. I think we need to not fall asleep. Yeah. Need to take Nebraska seriously. Michigan has had a tendency to occasionally sleep on a team. and they don't show up, and that would need to happen here. JJ would need to get intercepted, 3 or 4 times, because otherwise JJ has, obviously a wide skill set, right? So obviously he can run just like your guy, Harburg, but he also can throw the ball. He can throw the short, medium, long ball. He can hand it off if he needs to. He can do a lot of things. And so he's a versatile player. He reminds me, I'm trying to think of some, Patrick Mahomes is a lot to compare somebody to, but from a skill set perspective and what he can do and the improvisation that he can do reminds me of a young Patrick Mahomes and what he can do. And so you combine that with an O-line that I would argue isn't our best. It's, again, Ladarius Henderson at left tackle, and now Carson Barnhart at right tackle. Assuming they keep that personnel, and they're not going to change it again, they're finally taking the Michigan Wolverines live recommendation to have Ladarius at left tackle and Barnhart at right tackle. Then you have Trente Jones as the sixth personnel, because, as you probably know, Michigan runs a lot of 6 lineman sets, because Harbaugh likes to pound the rock. He likes those bunch formations. He's an old school 80s style Bo Schembechler like throwback in a lot of ways. And that's one of them. So that's how important that 6th lineman is to talk about. You combine that with, now you actually have a real receiving threat. Roman Wilson has turned into an actual answer in the red zone. That was one of Michigan's biggest struggles, is red zone touchdowns for the longest time. But Roman Wilson has been working on that. Cornelius Johnston obviously had the Ohio State game. And you've got Colston Loveland at tight end, who I would kind of argue is a receiving and really kind of everything, like tight end, wide receiver hybrid role at this point, because of just how he's used in motion formations, just like kind of getting out in motion, going on out routes, tight end option plays, things like that. JJ trusts him a lot. And so if Roman Wilson is able to catch some balls, Colston Loveland has some clutch plays. And then on defense, really, I think that the big takeaway is seeing how healthy Rod Moore is at safety, right? Because I will say Keon Sabb has looked good as his replacement. He's actually been named our impact player of the game a couple of times. So he's come in and he's done some great things for Michigan. Obviously, five solo tackles, 9 total, half a sack, and that's as somebody who's not really considered a starter, but he has to be right now. So he's doing pretty well. Kenneth Grant has been a real impact player on defense. So of course, you've got your seniors, your Michael Barretts of the world. Your guy, Ernest Hausman, has been competing with Michael Barrett, and it's really an iron sharpens iron type of thing, because Michael Barrett makes a play, Ernest Hausman makes a play, Michael Barrett makes a play, and they're rotating them out because they're both really good. So I would expect that your quarterback is going to have to run the ball a lot, which I will say, and I said this on the last show, that's one of our only defensive weaknesses is against running quarterbacks. You saw it last year. You even saw it at times this year when Wimsatt went out. I mean, Rutgers, Wimsatt had some runs that did go for yardage. So yeah, I think the keys to the game: don't fall asleep, produce, keep Harburg to a minimum in terms of rushing yards, and then you might have a victory for Michigan. So
we're going to run option.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So what do you think's going to happen there?
Yeah, I think with
somebody when Ernest Hausman is in the game, somebody's going to go, I don't care what happens this play, hit that guy.
Yep. Yep. Oh, he is, and he's in that mold of like he'll just go after you. So yeah, if he bites on the wrong guy, that could be a problem when you look at RPOs and you look at option. I did see some option in the film that I watched,
Right.
and it seemed to work pretty well, but it was working well against teams called Louisiana Tech and
Right.
teams called NIU,
Right.
and so it's obviously stepping up a notch here. I also noticed that Shadur Sanders, Colorado, is also a dynamic quarterback
Right.
and caused some real problems for the
Well,
defense.
they
So
do
just
for everybody. I mean, people quarterbacks that can run, cause problems for everybody. So it's a matter of whether or not Nebraska can actually, mix the option with some other plays. I think they have to run stuff like counters, traps, and option because their
yeah,
offensive line is not Nebraska's offensive line is not just good enough to get up and do inside zone and outside zone plays and block straight up by themselves. They need something that's going to give them leverage on people or get people out of position. So all defensive tackles are big and nasty. It's kind of what they
well,
are, for
we
God's
we
sakes.
have a
By
little
definition.
we love our community. Obviously, some enthusiastic Michigan fans here.
Yeah.
Jason is one of our actually helped me came in clutch on the last Michigan post game show because our normal co-host wasn't able to make it. Jason came in and was co-host, so we appreciate that he was able to do that for us.